On a Prayer, Faith is Awaken by Elton Thomas, Episode 11, Healing Hands. Lucy Embree stood in the fluorescent-lit hallway of St. Mary's Hospital, watching the steady stream of nurses and doctors moving in and out of patient rooms. The muted sounds of beeping monitors and the faint murmur of conversation filled the air, blending into the familiar hum of a hospital at the edge of dawn. Despite the hour, the emergency department was always busy, a constant reminder of the city's struggles, accidents, violence, lives on the brink. She sighed, her fingers tightening around the handle of the coffee cup in her hand. The caffeine did little to push back the exhaustion that clung to her, but she took a sip anyway, savoring the brief moment of stillness before the next case arrived. Lucy was a sexual assault nurse examiner, or SANE. Her job was to collect evidence, provide medical care, and offer a safe space for victims of assault, people whose lives had been shattered in an instant, left to pick up the pieces in the aftermath. It was a role she had chosen not just for the clinical aspect, but because it gave her a way to fight back, to be a source of hope for those who had none. But some days, the weight of it all was overwhelming. Her thoughts drifted to Roxy, the woman she had been working with for the past few months. Roxy's story had touched something deep within Lucy, a quiet rage at the world that allowed people like Jackson Brown to thrive, preying on the vulnerable. Lucy had seen many women like Roxy come through the hospital's doors, their faces etched with the same pain, the same hopelessness. But there was something different about Roxy. Beneath the layers of trauma and fear, there was a strength, a resilience that Lucy admired. And now, Roxy was back to face the demons she had once fled from. Lucy glanced down the hall toward the small room where Roxy was waiting. The idea of confronting Jackson had brought Roxy back to the hospital, not as a victim, but as someone seeking healing and closure before the battle began. Lucy had seen the fear in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Determination. It wasn't often that people came back from the kind of trauma Roxy had endured, not with the fire still burning inside them. Setting her coffee down on the counter, Lucy straightened her scrubs and made her way down the hallway, her footsteps light but purposeful. The weight of the hospital's atmosphere clung to her, but she had long since learned to move through it, to be a source of calm in the chaos. She paused outside the door to Roxy's room, taking a deep breath before knocking softly and pushing it open. The room was small, with a single bed pushed against the far wall and a chair beside it. The fluorescent lights cast a pale, sterile glow over everything, but Lucy's presence brought a warmth that the room lacked. Roxy sat in the chair, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her gaze fixed on the floor. She didn't look up as Lucy entered, but her body tensed, the lines of her face hardening with the effort to keep her emotions in check. "Hey," Lucy said gently, her voice soft as she pulled up a chair beside Roxy. "How are you feeling?" Roxy's shoulders lifted in a small shrug, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice low and rough. "I thought I'd feel better being here, trying to get some closure, but—" Her voice trailed off, and Lucy waited, giving her the space she needed to find the words. "It's harder than I thought," Roxy said finally, her fingers gripping the edges of the chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "I thought I was past all of this. I thought I was strong enough." "You are strong," Lucy said firmly, leaning forward slightly. "What you've been through, it would have destroyed a lot of people. But you're here. You're facing it." Roxy shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It doesn't feel like I'm strong. It feels like I'm barely holding on." Lucy's heart clenched as she reached out, placing a gentle hand on Roxy's arm. Healing isn't easy. It doesn't happen all at once. It takes time, and it takes a lot of courage. Roxy finally looked up, her gaze meeting Lucy's, the vulnerability in her eyes raw and exposed. "I'm scared, Lucy," she whispered. "I'm scared of what's going to happen if I go back out there. If I face him again." Lucy's grip tightened slightly, her own emotions welling up as she thought about the battle Roxy was preparing to fight. She knew what it meant to face your past, to confront the darkness that had shaped you, and she knew how terrifying that could be. "You don't have to do this alone," Lucy said softly. You have people who care about you, people who want to help. Roxy's lips trembled, and she quickly wiped at her eyes, trying to hide the tears that threatened to spill over. I don't want to be weak. You're not weak, Lucy said firmly, her voice filled with quiet strength. Being afraid doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of Roxy's emotions hanging in the air. Lucy watched as Roxy struggled to compose herself, her chest rising and falling with the effort of keeping her emotions in check. But there was something in the way she sat, in the way her fingers curled tightly into fists, that told Lucy Roxy wasn't giving up. Not yet. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Roxy said quietly, her voice thick with uncertainty. I don't know how to move forward. Lucy leaned forward, her gaze steady and full of compassion. You take it one step at a time. You focus on the things you can control, and you let the people who care about you help with the rest. Roxy blinked, her expression softening as she absorbed Lucy's words. There was a vulnerability in her eyes that Lucy recognized, the same vulnerability she had seen in so many survivors before. It was the look of someone who had fought so hard to survive that they didn't know how to let themselves be cared for. You're not alone in this, Lucy added, her voice soft but resolute. You have Dusty, you have Pastor Ethan, and you have me. We're with you, Roxy. Roxy exhaled shakily, her body relaxing just a little as the weight of her fear lifted, if only slightly. She glanced down at her hands, her fingers slowly uncurling from the fists they had been clenched in. I don't know how to let people help me, Roxy admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Lucy smiled gently. It's hard, I know. But it's okay to let people in. It's okay to let people care about you. For the first time that night, Roxy smiled. A small, hesitant smile, but a smile nonetheless. It was a fragile thing, like the first ray of sunlight breaking through a storm, but it was there. Thanks, Lucy, Roxy said softly, her voice filled with a quiet gratitude that Lucy hadn't expected. You're welcome, Lucy replied, her heart warming at the sight of that smile. She had seen too many people broken by their pasts, too many lives shattered beyond repair. But Roxy was different. She was strong, yes, but more importantly, she was willing to heal. As Lucy stood to leave, she gave Roxy's hand a gentle squeeze. You've already come so far. Don't forget that. Roxy nodded, her eyes softening as she watched Lucy go, and for the first time in a long time, Roxy felt a flicker of hope. A small, fragile thing, but enough to keep her moving forward. As Lucy stepped into the hallway, the sterile hospital lights seemed a little less harsh, the sounds of the hospital a little less overwhelming. She had spent years helping people like Roxy, guiding them through the aftermath of their trauma. But tonight, she felt something different, a sense of purpose, a deeper connection to the people she cared for. The battle against Jackson was far from over. Dusty was still out there, fighting to bring Mila home. But here, in this small hospital room, a different kind of battle had been fought. And for tonight at least, it felt like they were winning.